You know, for the past few years, it feels like we've all been holding our breath, just waiting for some huge world-altering conflict to break out. But what if we've been looking for the wrong thing? The year 2026, it isn't shaping up to be about one single giant war. No, it's about something way more complex. An age of small fires, burning all at once, all across the globe.
This quote just nails it, right? We're not waiting for some single big explosion. The reality is, we are already living in the middle of dozens of smaller, interconnected conflicts. They're quietly reshaping our world, and as we're about to see, they have a much more direct impact on our lives than we might think.
And that's a fair question. It all feels so distant, so abstract. But by the end of this, I promise you, we are going to connect the dots. We're going to draw a straight line from a drone strike in the Middle East to a naval patrol near Taiwan, all the way to the price you pay for gas and for your groceries. And it all comes down to how the very nature of conflict is changing. So to really get a handle on this new landscape, we first have to understand the new rules of the game. Because power and warfare in the 21st century, they're being completely rewritten. It's faster, it's cheaper, and a lot of the time, it's totally invisible.
Think about how we used to picture war. It was something nations declared, right? Fought between national armies on some physical battlefield. But today, oh man, it's a completely different ballgame. It's undeclared and just constant. It's fought using proxies, and the battlefields are often invisible. They're happening in cyberspace, through economic sanctions, and with incredibly sophisticated drone and AI warfare.
Okay, let's zero in on one of those terms for a second. Proxy war. This one is absolutely crucial. This is when major powers want to avoid a direct, catastrophic clash, so instead they fund, arm, and support opposing sides in someone else's regional conflict. They get to fight each other without ever firing a single direct shot. And if you want a perfect real-world example, look no further than the civil war in Sudan, which is set to enter its third year in 2026. This is not just an internal struggle. On one side, you have the Sudanese Armed Forces, or SAF, and they're backed by countries like Egypt and Turkey. In fighting them, the Rapid Support Forces, the RSF, who are backed primarily by the United Arab Emirates. It's a devastating local war, but it's being fueled by a much larger regional power struggle. But here's the thing. The battlefield isn't just military anymore. Some of the most intense rivalries today are being fought with regulations, tax rules, and these massive investment plans. We're in the middle of an economic Cold War. I mean, take the rivalry between Saudi Arabia and the UAE. These two were once super tight allies. Now they are direct competitors. They each have a grand economic plan, Vision 2030 for the Saudis, Vision 2031 for the UAE, and the goal is to become the #1 business hub in the entire region. And this economic competition, it spills over into foreign policy, where they back opposing sides in places like Yemen and Sudan, creating all this friction and instability.
And then you've got this third layer, hybrid warfare. This is where things get really sneaky. It's where nations blend conventional military threats with sabotage, with disinformation, with cyber attacks, all designed to weaken an adversary without ever triggering a full-scale war.
Just look at this pattern of recent Russian activity. Drones entering NATO airspace, fighter jets probing defenses, a spy ship that's suspected of mapping critical undersea internet and energy cables. It's a strategy of constant pressure, of subversion and intimidation. These are all actions that fall just below the threshold of open war, but they send a very, very clear message.
Okay, so we've got these new types of conflict: proxy, economic, and hybrid. Now, where do they become truly dangerous for the entire world? Well, it happens at a handful of critical locations we call global choke points. These are the places where one of these small fires can cause a truly global explosion.
All right, I'm going to throw a number at you. 92%. Just let that sink in for a second. 92%. What in the world could be that concentrated in just one single place?
The answer? Well, it's the very engine of our modern world: advanced semiconductor chips. The phone in your pocket, the computer on your desk, the servers that literally run the internet, they all depend on these chips. And a staggering 92% of the most advanced ones are all manufactured in Taiwan. This creates something called the silicone shield, but it's also a massive, massive vulnerability.
And the risk profile here is crucial. China has reportedly set a 2027 deadline for its military to be ready for an invasion, and they recently deployed 100 warships in a show of force. But most analysts believe a full-on invasion is actually less likely than a naval blockade. And a blockade? That could halt the shipment of those ships and effectively freeze the entire global tech and electronics industry in its tracks, overnight. So that's the tech choke point. The second major one is all about energy. Roughly a quarter of the world's entire oil trade passes through the narrow shipping lanes of the Middle East. Any conflict here, whether it's a proxy war or a direct confrontation, threatens to choke off a huge portion of the world's energy supply. So we have new kinds of wars happening in these globally critical locations. This is where we answer that first big question. How does this actually affect you? This is the point where geopolitics stops being just news and starts becoming a line item in your personal budget. Let's just walk through the chain reaction. It's like dominoes. A conflict flares up in a choke point like the Middle East. The supply of a key commodity like oil gets disrupted or even just threatened. Immediately global prices spike, just on the fear alone. And then, suddenly, your cost for fuel goes up. And because it takes fuel to transport literally everything, your food costs rise too. And believe me, it doesn't stop there. This chart really shows you just how dramatic that spike can be. In a calm global scenario, some forecasters see oil prices potentially trending lower, maybe around $50 a barrel. But one significant conflict, a so-called war spike, could flip that to $150 a barrel, maybe in a matter of days. That is a tripling of a foundational cost for the entire global economy. And what happens when prices spike and uncertainty rises? Well, investors, they get scared. They pull their money out of what they see as riskier markets, and they flee to the perceived safety of things like U.S. government bonds. This can cause stock markets around the world to fall, even in countries that are doing totally fine economically. The fear itself becomes a financial virus. So, when you put all this together, what's the big takeaway as we look ahead? The world of 2026 is not one that rewards blind optimism. It's a world that rewards awareness, and it rewards preparation. Ultimately, this is the new reality we all have to grasp. Understanding global affairs, these choke points, these new forms of conflict, it isn't some academic exercise anymore. It directly, tangibly impacts your wallet through fuel prices, the cost of goods, and the stability of your investments. Which leaves us with this final thought. In an age of small fires, the best strategy isn't to just hope for calm to return. It's to learn how to manage the chaos. It's about being disciplined, it's about staying informed, and it's about understanding that in our deeply interconnected world, no conflict is ever truly that far away.